Call of Duty 2 is probably my favorite Call of Duty game, and that's purely for sentimental reasons. It was the first adult game I ever bought. My parents were extremely strict on what games I was allowed to play as a kid. But regardless on how you feel about the game, you cannot deny that it's probably the most important Call of Duty when it comes to shaping those elements that made these games so awesome and loved. It took everything that made the previous installment great and turned it up to 11. This game is action-packed and fast-paced. It fixes some of the mechanical issues United Offensive had to compensate for the intensity of this game. The entire game is pure frontline action, no espionage. For the first time, Call of Duty is recognizable looking back. Around the same time that Grey Matter Studios began working on United Offensive, Infinity Ward began laying the groundwork for this game, but it wouldn't be announced until April 7th, 2005. The goal of this game was to use their new engine to create battlefields on a scale that had never been seen before. Post-war effects like smoke and debris would populate the battlefield, and you would see mass assaults with a huge amount of soldiers. Keep in mind that Infinity Ward consisted of 75 members at this time. The studio is bigger than it was for the previous installment, but still very small compared to the titan that it would turn into. The game would take you all the way from Moscow to Africa to Normandy and to Germany. Once again, we have a Soviet, British and American campaign. It was parted up into these sub-campaigns that each has 2 to 4 missions. The game would feature a context-sensitive dialogue system. This means your squad mates will call out enemy positions and maneuvers. The enemy will do the same to you. With the new regenerating health system, Infinity Ward could keep the pace high and the battles intense without the player running into a wall. If you remember, this was an issue I had with United Offensive. The visual upgrade from the previous game is very apparent. This game is gorgeous for a game that came out in 2005. The game would release on the 25th of October 2005. Like its predecessor, it was very well received. People praised the new health system and were blown away by the visual and effects upgrade. It was praised for its excellent sound design and very in-your-face bombastic level design. The complaints most people had were about some performance issues. I did encounter that while I was getting the footage for this video, but it was mostly a smooth ride. Like we did with the last game, I want to look at the trailer to get a sense of the marketing that was done. The trailer for this game has a much more depressing tone than the previous. It plays this very epic but kinda sad track that is accompanied by very intense battle footage showing the destruction and killing of the war. It shows the different locations you'll be fighting at. Like the previous trailer, it showcases some technically impressive battle scenes, and although that game didn't really live up to it, this game does. Without further ado, let's go through the game. In the Soviet campaign, you play as Private Vasily Kozlov. You start out defending Moscow, and then you take part in the brutal house-to-house fighting of Stalingrad. Here we begin the first sub-campaign called the Winter War, and this is the first mission. It takes place in winter 1941 in Moscow. You get a recap of the event that has happened over some archive footage. I think this was a much better decision than having a briefing. It grounds the game in the real thing. This game continues with the diary entries. This time it's for every campaign. Like the Sicily mission in United Offensive, the date doesn't make any sense here. It takes place on the 17th of December 1941, almost 2 weeks after the Germans are pushed back from the Moscow area. Like the previous game, this first mission is a tutorial mission. You run some drills, and one of COD's most memeable moments happens here.
These are potatoes, Comrade Commissar! Why are we using potatoes instead of real grenades?
About halfway through the mission, you go off to interrogate this prisoner. You are interrupted and told that the Germans are moving in. Now you fight for real. You have to go to the armory and get some weapons. As soon as you leave, the battle picks up. The noise is deafening. They really stepped up their sound game. There is this part where you move through this trench as the battle rages over your head. This moment is very tense and extremely well done. Eventually you get to the armory where you pick up a submachine gun. After that you get to this place where you have to cross in front of a machine gun. Here you learn to use smoke grenades. A smoke grenade will conceal you so an enemy will not shoot at you directly while a smoke screen is up. Right after that you shoot your first Germans as they come out of this half-track. Now you start fighting up the street. Already the battles feel more intense than the ones in the previous game, and we haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. This is also the game where the legendary German NPC lines come from. Eventually you get to this gate with a Panzerwerfer behind it. You have to go around. You move up this mound with a house on top. Here we find out that the game has exploding barrels, and it's the first COD game with second chance, and Germans will throw your grenades back at you, which, if I remember correctly, didn't happen in the first game. When you get to the Panzerwerfer, you plant a charge on it. Vehicles function the exact same way in this game, but here you can sneak up on them and plant a bomb. After that, the mission is over. This opening mission does what it should. It introduces you to the game, its mechanics, and eases you into the gameplay. It's not like Pathfinder where you have a whole tonal build-up as well, but it's a great opener nonetheless, and it clocks in at around the same time. Now we move a whole year ahead to winter 1942. The Soviets successfully held Moscow and we are now in Stalingrad. You start by stealthily moving through this storage area. You hear a German trying to talk you into surrender through a megaphone like in the Stalingrad Suez mission in the previous game. When you move up to the front of the building, the fighting starts. Right now I'm really noticing how the smoke lingers on the battlefield. Soon after that you have to fight your way across this street. After reaching the other side, you fight your way through the house. I think the house-to-house fighting is portrayed fantastically in this game. The Germans can pop out from any corner. We also see the benefits of the regenerating health in this section. Then we get to the first cinematic moment, I guess. You're going through this trench as a wounded man is being dragged in front of you. Some tanks then move across over your head. In the building on the other side, we're faced with this square. You have to defend the building from a German counterattack. I love this part. This is the first time we really see what this game can do. The music builds as you're told to get ready. A smoke screen rises on the opposite end of the square. Then as the music stops, a massive German charge emerges from the smoke screen. It's almost like Infinity Ward knew that this would blow everyone's mind back in 2005. But wait, it gets better. You hold them back for a bit, then the music swells as you countercharge. You get out into the square. The battlefield is big and very populated. It's loud and the post-war effects gives everything a very gritty feeling. If you remember in the last game, my main problem with the Stalingrad missions is that they felt very empty. This is fixed here. The new base mechanics allow us for a lot more momentum. The pace is high and the battle is intense. Eventually you get to the city hall. Here you fight for every room in a fierce battle. After that, the Germans barricade themselves upstairs. You plant some charges and move out to watch the fireworks. The mission ends, and with it the first sub-campaign of the Soviet campaign. This mission is really where Call of Duty 2 rises above its predecessor. We were introduced to the base mechanics and gameplay loop in the previous mission, which is quite similar to the previous game, but they amp everything up tenfold. Like I said in the previous video, COD is about the spectacle, and watching the building blow up has been clear in my memory ever since I first played this game back in 2012-2013-ish. The second sub-campaign is called Not One Step Back, which is the order that Stalin gives during the Battle of Stalingrad, which introduces the blocking units that we saw in the previous game. We don't see them in this game, but they are mentioned in the opening cinematic. It once again consists of archive footage and an explanation on the fighting that was done in Stalingrad. We get to know the ferocious street fighting that we will soon take part in. In this mission, we move through the city to repair a telephone wire. It starts with you moving up this alley where you can see an MG42 mow soldiers down in the distance. You turn onto the street where you are met with heavy fire. Here you find the first part you gotta fix. This next part does a very good job at portraying the brutality of this style of fighting as you go through this broken house. It's incredibly loud and intense. After that, you get to the second fixing point. Here you fight in yet another broken building. This portrayal of Stalingrad is leagues above the one in the first game. The snow and smoke bring this raw grittiness that feels very real. This game is very immersive. Now we get to fight up this... Now we get to fight up this street. These moments are probably my favorite in the campaign. It's just so good at showing the brutal tug of war that Stalingrad was. At the end of the street, you find the next part you have to fix. You move through another broken building with 2 fixing points. Eventually you make it to this basement where the last fixing point is. You fight your way through it and get to the field telephone. You immediately get a new objective: destroy a tank that's approaching. After fighting your way out the house, you make it to where the tank is. You use one of the buildings to sneak up on it and you get it. But another tank shows up. You chase it through this German position and all the way back to where the mission started. You destroy it, but it's not over yet. You have to fight your way further up the street to get the last tank. After getting that tank, the mission is over. I really like the wire gimmick that this mission had. It changes the context of what you're doing. Instead of going out to take something or hold something, you're simply fighting through the city to repair the wire. By simply changing the reason why you're going out there, they have created a mission with a unique feeling. In this mission you go through these water pipes to get to the train station. The whole section in the pipe is just phenomenal. You watch the bombers fly overhead and stray bullets will pierce the pipes and kill your comrades. You feel like you can just die at any point here. Great section, but it really only serves as a cinematic opening to this mission, but it's really well done. You get out of the pipes at the train yard. Your first order of business is to secure the station house. The design of the level is splendid here. You're in an open area with a trench and some carts for cover. You move up to the station house and secure it. Next we have one of those Pavlov's house segments where you have to hold the station while the Germans try and retake it. Then a tank shows up and you go out and destroy it. You move through this train building again, and on the other side you're introduced to a new element in this game: multiple objectives. These are sections where you have multiple objectives and the map opens up. The devs said that they wanted to remove some linearity and have larger battlefields. This is a great way to do it. You decide what order you want to take the objectives. This helps the battle feel a lot bigger, which is something this game does really well. However, some of these areas are better made than others. Here you have 3 objectives. In the first, you have to clear out another station house. In the second one, you have to take down this small German position, and you do the same for the third one. But like I said, you can do these 3 in any order you'd like. After that, the mission is over, and so is the sub-campaign. We are introduced to tanks and the multiple objective areas here. The new engine really helps the game in its portrayal of the brutality of these battles.
Take cover! Those men are all dead! This is suicide!
We are now at the last Soviet sub-campaign. It's called Fortress Stalingrad. We get another cinematic of archive footage that explains the situation. The Germans are completely encircled and you are delivering the final blow. The mission starts with you retaking some apartment buildings. You're in this really intense firefight as the Germans cling on to what little progress they've made. Eventually a tank shows up and you destroy it. You push through these buildings, and on the other side you have to cover some of your comrades as they try and take the building on the opposite side. Here I want to highlight the fact that the emotional charge of the Soviet campaign in the previous game is in this campaign as well. You hear one of your mates say, "This one is for my mother, my sister," so on. A tank blows a hole in the wall and you have to take it out. This part is pretty hard. The tank drives around this heavily populated ruined building. After that, you begin moving towards the city hall and the mission ends. This mission is super intense. I actually ended up feeling exhausted after playing some of these missions because of the amount of things that happened at once. This entire mission is just you and your boys making your way to City Hall. You take part in some more intense street fighting. I can't get over how well it's portrayed in this game, this desperate tug of war between both sides. Like I said earlier, the amount of concentration you put into this game ends up making you feel exhausted after some of the missions. When the mission starts, you're in the middle of clearing the house. As you meet your other boys, one of them gets taken out by a sniper. Your mate uses his helmet to get the sniper's attention and you take him out. Then you go off to clear the rest of the building. But obviously, since this is the last mission in the campaign, they're gonna end it with another German charge. This one isn't quite as big as the one in Demolition. You spend the majority of the battle sniping machine gunners. Watch your back. When the Germans get close, they're gonna enter the basement and walk up behind you. This area looks to be the square of the fallen fighters, considering its proximity to the city hall. In reality, it's much bigger, and the Germans held this square until they were forced to surrender in February. After pushing them back, the mission ends. At this point, I began to feel the fatigue of the gameplay loop, as I felt that I had been doing more or less the same thing for the past 30 minutes. It has its moments though. That's it for the Soviet campaign. This campaign shows off the improvements of the game very well. Bigger battles, higher pace, and more smooth. Hopefully we will see them use it to bigger effect in the following campaigns. It did end up getting a little repetitive at the end, but I enjoyed it. It took me around an hour and 20 minutes to complete the campaign. This portrayal of Stalingrad was jaw-dropping. You faced an intense fight down every street you went. They show the brutal tug of war very well. The charge in Demolition has to be my favorite moment of this campaign. That part just it gets your blood pumping. But I must say that the missions in not only this campaign but the entire game are very arbitrary. It's like the devs just saw some locations in a book and then made a fictional mission taking place there. There is one thing I really wish they did. As the campaign goes on and the Germans get more desperate, you start to find more and more Germans using Soviet firearms instead of German. This could have been a great way to show the Germans' logistical issues through the environment. In the British campaign, you play as Sergeant John Davis. You go through the North African campaign as well as the Battle of Caen. I don't think the North African campaign has been portrayed in a video game like this at this point. Captain Price returns with the hot-headed Scottish man, Private McGregor. This first British sub-campaign is the Battle of El Alamein. In the beginning, you once again get a recap over archive footage on the events that led to the battle. In this mission, like the title suggests, you're raiding a German position as a diversion for the main force. Your objective is to destroy their supplies. You immediately hit the position after mission start. The Germans are too preoccupied with the other forces to see you coming. You have to take out 3 hard points. The first one is to your left immediately after entering the position. Now you have to fight your way through the trenches and get to the next point. Germans will be in the trench as well as above it. The next point is in front of this bunker. You're gonna be clearing quite a few bunkers in this game. The design of these areas are very reminiscent of levels like Dam or Alp Chateau in the previous game. For the third one, you gotta move through another bunker. After taking it out, it's time to meet with the rest of the squad. When you get there, you are greeted with a supply depot. You have to go around and destroy supplies. I really like that the area is smoked up in this part. It disorients you and adds some chaos into the mix. This part is a little hard but not frustrating. After that, you raid one last bunker to find some intelligence. You are then told that another British position is under attack and the mission ends with you going back there. This mission is another short opener. It introduces you to the nature of desert warfare. You have to use man-made structures like bunkers and trenches for cover because of how open it is. They also take the time to actually let you get to know your comrades a bit with the back and forth between Price and McGregor. In this mission, they also show off the power of their new engine by having you defend against a massive German assault during the entire mission. They give you some toys to play with, like the machine guns and 88s. I also like how you can see the Germans approach in the distance and that you can actually hit them. This mission is probably the hardest so far. The German assault is vicious. After defending on the ground, you go to this rooftop to spot for the artillery. You have to help them take out these tanks. Meanwhile, Germans will try and go up through the building to hit you in the back. The mission ends with some Crusader tanks showing up and saving the day. The mission didn't really stand out to me, not that it's bad, it just isn't that interesting. You just go around defending various points. But it was pretty cool to spot for the artillery. This mission, however, is followed by one of my favorite missions in the entire game. In this mission, you move from trench line to trench line behind tanks to destroy some 88s. You start close to the first trench line. You go through this tunnel to the other side of this ridge. On the other side, you get to this jaw-dropping and terrifying crossing to the next line. Watching this back, I do think this part looks a little empty. The noise and the artillery does make up for it though. So as long as you just look straight ahead, it's fine. On the other side, you go through another tunnel and a bunker. This section is probably a better example of what I mean by these bunkers reminding me of Dam. On the other side, you move through another trench system, where you take out some 88s. You go through another tunnel and then make another terrifying crossing. This one is way better than the last. The battlefield feels big, though a little empty, but there's so much going on around you that you don't notice it while playing the game. About halfway to the next line, the tank you're taking cover behind blows up. You find another tank to complete the crossing. On the other side, you do the exact same thing you did with the others. Take out some 88 crews and clear some trenches, tunnels and bunkers. However, on the other side of this ridge, you find this hamlet and you gotta go clear the buildings. After that, you report back to Montgomery and the mission ends. Like I said, this is one of my favorite missions in the game. Those parts where you cross no man's land are just incredibly well done. It's tense and does desert warfare justice. There is practically no natural cover in a desert. In this mission, you gotta clear some coastal positions in a town named Eldaba. The opening to this mission is phenomenal. It's very reminiscent of the opening to the first Soviet mission in United Offensive. You drive towards Eldaba in the open desert. This beautiful piece of music plays and you can see the city in the distance and the smoke that rises from it. You observe the air battle above you. You think they're too preoccupied, but right as you're about to enter Eldaba, a bomb is dropped on the tank in front of you. As you enter the city, you are greeted with some more urban fighting. First, you have to fight your way to the coast. You have to flank this machine gun by the entrance. While doing this, you realize that this is gonna be just like the Stalingrad missions. Other than the context and the assets, it pretty much feels the same gameplay-wise. After taking out the first machine gun, you go through this house and this alley and you arrive at the docks. Now you have to take out these 88s. This section is really cool. It's very populated, Germans will pop out from windows and from rooftops. The air battle returns above you. After that, you clear out this house and call in the artillery. They wreck the harbor. You meet another machine gun that you gotta flank. You get one of the trailer shots here where one of your mates tries to kick down a door and is shot through it.
Open the door!
You fight your way through these small alleys and take out the machine guns. You clear this house and collect some intel. You then get back to the docks after clearing the town where the army has begun offloading. The mission ends and so does the sub-campaign. In this mission we return to the nasty urban fighting from the Soviet campaign. It does set itself apart by being more claustrophobic and having the Germans take different positions. The opening to this mission is easily the best part, and by keeping the air battle overhead they make the battle feel big. Now we get to the tank sub-campaign. Both missions are pretty short, so I've decided to condense them into one. Unlike the tank missions in the previous game where you just look over the top of the tank, here you look through the periscope. The tank controls the same. You move and shoot the main gun, but the machine gun is operated by AI. You also have regenerating health here. In the first mission you engage a German tank squadron out in the open desert. The approach is really well done. You ride with your boys in formation as the Germans try to pick you off from a distance. Taking out the enemy tanks is all you do in this mission. In the next one you drive along this ridge where you have to watch out for other tanks, Panzerfausts and 88s. This is the longer of the two missions. The 88s are your targets. But again, all you do is drive around and blow shit up. These two missions are very similar to the ones in the previous game, but the setting is different. The openness of the desert adds another challenge as a tank could theoretically pick you off from anywhere. Now we enter the penultimate sub-campaign in the British campaign, but the last one in Africa. You start with another cinematic. We are now in Tunisia, 1943. This is Rommel's last stand in Africa. That's also the title of the campaign. The mission starts with you trying to hold back a fierce German assault. Eventually an armored car rolls up and turns the wall into Swiss cheese. You get orders to leave the area as Germans burst through the door. You gotta steal that armored car. You fight your way outside and flank the car. You hop on board and cover your boys as they get the car going. Yes, this is a chase level. Like Normandy Route 13 and Either Damn Getaway in the first game, you gotta fend off the Germans as you escape in the car. You gotta watch out for Panzerschrecks as they are an instant kill. The AT guys can pop out from anywhere. Eventually you encounter a tank. You go around and hit it in the booty. You roam around aimlessly and seemingly can't find a way out. You hit a mine and fly out of the vehicle. Now you gotta escape on foot. This mission is closer to Sicily Escape in United Offensive. There you also crash and have to escape through a town riddled with Germans. As luck would have it, you encounter more Brits and they offer to cover your rear. You fight through the city in a tense fight until you reach the rally point and drive out in a truck. To offer a break from the gameplay loop, in this campaign they recycle an idea from the previous COD with a chase level. The level is very reminiscent of Sicily Escape. All in all, this mission is very tense, and the entire time I couldn't help but wonder if this happened for real, what's even the likelihood of them making it out?
Troops! Behind the supply crates! Dead ahead! Fire!
In this mission you retake Tujan, which is the town you lost in the last mission. The mission starts as you roll into Tujan. Immediately the front tank gets hit by an 88. You now have to take out various 88s around the city. You flank the flak gun and blow it up. Then you have this intense firefight in front of this building. You get to the roof and plop down on the other side. You meet more Germans shortly after. I have to say, even though I compared these urban missions to the Stalingrad missions, the layout of these desert towns do set them apart. In Stalingrad you had big squares, big buildings and big streets. In these towns everything is smaller and more claustrophobic. You get to the next 88 and take out the crew. You have 3 more 88s to go. You get this scene where a German tank rolls up, but is then blown up by a British Crusader tank. After destroying the 88s, you gotta go take a mosque from the Germans. You take the mosque, but the Germans counterattack. Then your tanks show up and the Germans pull out. You've taken back Tujan. I started noticing a phenomena while watching this back. There's a lot of repetition in this game when it comes to objectives and overall level design, but you don't really notice while playing the game. There's something about the sheer intensity of the gameplay that just puts you in the zone and make you hyper-focus on what you're doing rather than what's around you.
Come in, dog six!
The mission starts with you driving through the streets of Matmata. Then out of nowhere you get ambushed. This next part is really intense. The Germans will run up on the rooftops and nade spam you on the ground. You cover your mate as he opens a gate. Now the level gets back to what you've been doing for the past hour or so. Street fighting. Other than using a flak gun in the end, this mission doesn't really have that much worth noting, but it's a pretty cool mission nonetheless. There is one last sub-campaign for the British, which is the Battle for Caen. The game wants you to play the D-Day missions in the American campaign first, but for the sake of maintaining structure, I'm gonna go through it now. You know the drill, another cinematic. This time we hear about how the British are struggling with conquering Caen, and you gotta fix it. The mission starts with you engaging the Germans in this park. After that, you make it over here where it's been shelled to shit. I think the environment shift from the park to this yard is really cool. After moving into the ruins, you get bombed by mortars and you get your next objective. Take out the mortar crews. You get pinned by this machine gun in the broken house, but McGregor saves the day. After that, you gotta get up to the second floor of this building where you discover that your Sten is magical. After taking out the mortar crew from up there, you go out into the street. You fight your way through the ruins and get to the second mortar crew. Now you've got another hefty firefight on your hands. I like the way you go between urban ruins and these more nature-esque parts in this mission. That's something that's pretty universal for all missions that take place in Normandy in this game. After a while, you get to this house, and when you go through and out the back door, you meet some surrendering Germans. Price says to hold fire, but this guy says... When you get out there, you see a squad of wounded Americans. Price says that you and McGregor gotta go get a truck to transport the Yankers. On the walk over there, I started to notice the ambience. It's very active with gunshots, explosions, so on and so forth. Looking back, it's been like that the entire game. Ambiences like these are also present in the last game, but the upgrade in sound design really shines through and make you feel so small compared to what's going on. The walk to the truck is mostly quiet, but you do meet some resistance towards the end. You get to the truck and McGregor jinxes it by saying it looks to be in good shape, but when we start driving it can barely accelerate. This is another chase sequence. But this sequence adds some spice by having you face off against a Tiger tank that's pursuing you. You destroy it with a Panzerschreck and arrive back at the house. The Yankers gets loaded in and the mission ends. I really like this opening mission. It had some intense firefights, a good chase sequence, and the part with the Germans taking care of the Americans was a nice touch, and that the British soldier wanted to mow them down. It sort of subverts expectations because I think we can all agree that the Germans were the bad guys in World War II. But the Brits still wanted to kill them even though they've been taking care of wounded enemies. In this mission you have to secure a crossroads and hold it. You run down this road and encounter some Germans. I love the setting of this level. I grew up in Denmark, which looks very similar to Normandy. And those stereotypical European towns and the overcast sky with the light rain just makes me yearn for the good old days. But obviously there was no bloodshed when I grew up. You clear some houses and make it to this building on the end of the street, but a tiger shows up and you have to deal with it. You clear the house and find a Panzerschreck. After that, you have to flank these Germans through these buildings. Most of this mission just consists of you clearing houses, fighting down the streets and taking out a half-track. Eventually, you get to the crossroads, but you gotta go check a farmhouse to secure your grasp on it. You clear it and move into the barn to destroy some radios. After destroying those, you gotta hold back 6 waves from a German counter-offensive. After holding back a fierce assault, another tiger arrives and begins shooting at you, but luckily some flyboys take it out. You head back to the crossroads and the mission ends. I really enjoyed this mission, not just because of nostalgia. I find this dark, oppressive setting really cool. The town itself is interesting and you move through many different areas. In the last video I wouldn't shut up about the design of the environment, but here it's just so well done. The mission starts with you advancing on a village on this country road. As you roll in, you encounter, you guessed it, a tiger tank. Your Sherman tries to take it out, but the tiger absorbs the blows and destroys it instead. You cut through this garden where you enter another multiple objective section. You have to secure various areas around the town. The mission continues the atmosphere of the previous level with the overcast sky and rain. They give you a whole town to walk around in, but it's designed with lanes and you're clearly supposed to take some objectives before others. Still a cool level, but I wish it was designed more like the Soviet multiple objective section. This mission opens with you getting to cover from mortar fire. It mimics the St. Mary Glees level in the previous game. Next you gotta take out the mortars. I like the farm setting. It adds some interesting terrain, like here where you have to move to the road and then go down a small decline to the village. The mortar shells are still coming down around you. The mortars are in this town square looking thing. This is a really cool sequence. The battle is fierce and the noise is deafening. I love good sound design and this game has damn good sound design. Next you gotta capture the German field HQ. You get to another cool part. Here you have to cross this open field to get to the HQ. After capturing it, you get to the second hardest part of this game, defending it against a German counterattack. They come with a massive charge. You gotta hold them back till reinforcements arrive. After taking shit for 3 minutes, you gotta go out to destroy a tank. After that, the mission is over and so is the battle for Khan. This mission is really where the environmental design shines. You fight through lots of different terrain and a town. There's something about actively watching the environment shift that really makes you feel like you're actually progressing. The British campaign in this game is obviously very different from the one in the previous. Here you are constantly on the front line. It was obviously the longest in the game, having 4 sub-campaigns instead of 3. I finished it in around 2.5 hours. The campaign took you to Africa, a new theater we haven't seen yet. This campaign is the first time we actually get somewhat nuanced characters that show personality and has certain established traits, like how McGregor has a temper. It does humanize the people in the game a bit. Both Operation Supercharge and the Brigade Box are top contenders for my favorite mission. Both of them show off the power of the new engine by having big play areas with lots of entities roaming around. But of course, the next mission we're gonna talk about puts both of these missions to shame.
What are you doing?
In the American campaign, you play as Corporal Bill Taylor from the 2nd Ranger Battalion. You go through the invasion of Normandy, you assault the Siegfried Line, and cross the Rhine. Over this cinematic, we don't get any narration, we get Eisenhower's speech before D-Day. This helps emphasize the finality of this operation in particular. In this mission, you gotta find and destroy some coastal guns. The mission begins with you in a landing craft. I like that the sailor is British. All sailors on D-Day were from the Royal Navy, so they were British. But some were actually Danish merchants, fun fact for you there. Anyways, as you get closer to the beach, machine gunners begin picking off your guys. After the ramp drops, the landing craft is blown up and you get the mandatory Saving Private Ryan part where a stunned Taylor looks around at the horror unfolding around him. Then one of your mates drag you to safety, but not before you witness a medic get mowed down. As you finally get up and start looking around, your mind gets completely blown. Even today, this is such an impressive section. It's so well done. There are so many soldiers and so much fucking noise. It feels huge. Now you gotta find a rope to scale the cliff. As you get up, it's revealed that the guns have been moved and now you gotta play a murderous game of find the thing. You move up along this trench line as the battle rages around you. This is where the new engine shines the most. I'm gonna say it again, this battle is huge. You fight your way across the German fortifications, clearing bunkers and trenches. On the other side, you're met with something you're already used to, fighting through towns. We also have one of these really cool garden things again. Eventually, you find the guns and destroy them with thermite. After that, you head back to the German positions to mop up. You have multiple objectives here as well. The mission ends. This is without a doubt the best D-Day mission to ever exist in gaming. Even today, it's absolutely astonishing. They push their new engine to the limit. Many soldiers are storming the beaches and the sound is deafening. Already here it gets quite graphic with scenes of soldiers slowly dying on the shore. They really created something special here. It's brutal, overwhelming, and does the history justice. This mission takes place the next day. The Germans are attempting to retake the point and you have to hold this crossroads. It's pretty fucking intense. They come down multiple roads and you gotta alternate between different sides. After 3 minutes of dealing with that, you are ordered to fall back. You use a machine gun to cover the retreat of your boys. Then you have to fight through this town as a tank rolls up. You get back to the trenches. The fighting escalates as more tanks show up. You pull further back and hear that reinforcements are coming, but you gotta hold back the Germans for another 5 minutes. After about 2 minutes, the German forces overwhelm again and you fall back to your last line, right up against the cliffs. Here the Germans will use the tunnels between bunkers to sneak up on you, so you gotta watch all sides. This helps sell the feeling of being overwhelmed by a vastly superior force. As the planes get closer, you deploy some smoke to mark your position. After that, the planes completely obliterate the Germans. As the mission ends, you get another radio broadcast from the period. This is another great mission and one of the ones I remember clearly all these years later. We are now in the hedgerows of Normandy. You move up this dirt road and into this field where you stop. You gotta cover your boys with your Springfield as they move up the field. They get on an 88 and shoot a silo in the village. Now we get a repeat of the Crossroads mission in the British campaign. You gotta clear out some buildings in the village. After that, you have to climb up on the silo to do some recon. A German counterattack comes shortly after getting to the top. Here you have to take out mortar teams as they move up. You gotta hold the village for 3 minutes, but after that reinforcements show up and the mission is over. That was the D-Day missions. This mission was good, but it doesn't really set itself apart from all the other stuff we've seen. They clearly wanted to include a sniper section like the one in United Offensive.
Im Erdgeschoss! Auf der linken Seite!
Now we're heading into Hürtgen Forest to assault the Siegfried Line. In this mission you clear a town called Bergstein at the foot of Hill 400. The mission plays out like the silo mission. You just go around clearing building after building. A cool detail I noticed is that in missions taking place during winter, you can spot enemies by looking for the exhalation of breath. Very cool detail that actually mattered in World War II. As a matter of fact, Simo Häyhä, the famous Finnish sniper, would stuff his mouth with snow to hide his breath. It is a long mission and it has some cool moments, but all in all, nothing special. This mission is named after the Rangers' motto: "You are finally assaulting the hill." It starts with you being shelled, the officer is having some trouble figuring out a plan until the men just charge forward. You have another well-executed charge section like Point to Hawk. You charge up the hill under machine gun and artillery fire. You get to this bunker where you put up a smoke screen. You charge forward, blow the door and clear the bunker. You move through the forest to the next bunker where you do the same. You take out a third bunker and begin assaulting the main bunker at the top of the hill. Here you gotta take multiple points around it until the bunker is yours and the mission ends. This mission was really good as well. I like the way they designed the hill and the pacing of the mission.
I got one! That was just the first!
This is the last mission in this sub-campaign. This mission is this game's Noville. If you remember, I raged super hard during that mission. It's not as hard as that, but you definitely have to do trial and error for a bit. You take on multiple waves and take cover from artillery fire. First you gotta snipe some mortar teams. You have to move across the hill to various points while it's being swarmed by Germans. Then you just have to hold back the Germans until reinforcements arrive. They throw tanks and half-tracks at you, and after this mission you can't help but feel exhausted. This is another mission I clearly remember. Now we've arrived at the last mission, crossing the Rhine. This mission is a great wrap-up for this game. It goes through various stages, something that will also become a staple of COD mission design. And each of these stages gives a little tribute to things we've done throughout the game. We start by using a machine gun on an amphibious vehicle. We disembark on the riverbank where we get pinned down. The Germans are shooting from atop a hill. You have to charge up and begin destroying some 88s. Eventually you get into this town for the last 88s. Here we have some urban combat. We get to this square where a tank shows up. After destroying the tank and taking out the last 88 crews, you rendezvous and the mission is over, and so is the game. Like I said, this is a great end to the game. We shoot from a landing craft, charge up a hill and do some street fighting. Call of Duty 2 is a huge step up from the previous game. They've simplified the base mechanics to allow for more fast-paced and intense action. With the new engine, they take full advantage of this and create some impressive moments like the charge in Demolition, Point to Hawk and Rangers Lead the Way. Moments like these had never been seen before at this point. The first game is great, but not without its flaws. Those flaws are addressed here. They try to recreate certain sections from the first game, but here they are made a lot better. They begin to utilize gimmicks like the armored car chase, the wire and the amphibious machine gun to keep the game interesting for the 6 hours I was playing it. They also start implementing more cinematic moments to wow the player. All of these things combined with the sound design make these battles feel huge and important. The previous game had a very heroic tone, like look at these people who put their life on the line for liberty. That's still in this game, but the tone of this game is more oppressive. They use grey a lot, everything is loud, and they don't shy away from showing horrible deaths and injuries, which adds to the hellish atmosphere of this game. They make a better attempt at emphasizing the scale of the conflict with the inclusion of the North African campaign. Now every campaign has its own set piece. The streets of Stalingrad, the Sahara Desert, and the hedgerows and villages of Normandy. Each campaign also shows a different way of fighting. In the Soviet you take part in brutal urban combat, in the British you're in big combined arms offensives through the desert, and you take part in big charges in the American. This game is just awesome, even today. Hope you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Bye!